The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call, please.
President Alexander. Acting President Alexander. Trustee Holm. Here. Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Renucci.
Here.
Trustee Smalley.
Here.
And Trustee Wisniewski.
Here.
Thank you.
First item is citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of this citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or if specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. Who here would like to participate in citizen participation this evening? Please step up to the podium and turn on the mic. Thanks.
Ed Hinsberger, 2944 Union Street. So I wasn't going to come here tonight until I saw the little video that the Chamber of Commerce did about the bike race. And they edited some of the Facebook comments to cut out people complaining about the parking issues. And that's just kind of the way they've been going the past 2 years. It's literally, it's almost comically bad how poorly they communicate with residents. They sent out the first email in May. They said they were going to provide resident-only parking. They were going to provide secure parking. When I emailed the chamber about it, it was, oh, no, we only said we were going to give people parking permits who requested it. And there will be another letter going out. So Sunday, June 11th, 5 days before the bike race, nobody on my block had received anything from the chamber. Contacted them again, basically got the response they were mailed last week. I got a handwritten one, hand-addressed one on Tuesday, the 13th, 3 days before the bike race. None of my neighbors got anything. The Wednesday before the bike race, Vanessa Lenz was going door to door, handing out parking information, and then told people, oh, they forgot to mail them to Union Street. So one of the biggest issues with the bike race has been the parking, the Chamber of Commerce not following through on their timelines, not saying what they're going to do. And, you know, for them to say, oh, it's in the mail, to then we forgot to mail them just to Union Street, where the majority of the people who have raised issues live. I don't think it was forgotten. Dealing with the chamber about anything is a joke. They sent somebody around on Thursday night at 8:30 at night. He was going into people's backyards, asking them about parking. He banged on my door at 9:30 at night. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. The night before the race to still not have a defined parking plan. Jamie Rohr's comments towards me at the previous public meeting, just calling me a complainer over and over again when I'm concerned about where I'm going to park my vehicle, and they're supposed to be running this, but they can't even provide that information until the day before the race, is absolutely ridiculous. During the race, they decided to make a garbage zone where people could throw, the racers could throw garbage. And it just happened to be a little section of Union Street right where my house is. So it's literally, it's borderline them trying to intimidate people for speaking out about the bike race. I honestly, I don't know what else to say. The Chamber of Commerce refuses to deal with residents and address the parking issues. The board asked them to send stuff out 2 weeks prior. They didn't do it. They forgot. It's been like this for the past 2 years, ever since they changed the route. You know, they're posting the video, and you'll see cuts off the top of the comments, you know, saying they forgot to send out parking info. If they're going to run this bike race, and this bike race is going to be a thing, there needs to be a solid timeline of them doing stuff, and there needs to be enforcement action if they don't mean it. This is a huge inconvenience to residents. This is a huge inconvenience to businesses. And if they don't want to take residents' concerns seriously, the village has been told time and time again about their behavior. The village has been told time and time again that this race isn't ADA compliant. It violates village ordinance. So at this point, the village can share in liability. If they do the bike race again next year and they play these little games and keep lying to residents and keep trying to do this sleight of hand stuff with their posts, this will be addressed in a different venue. The little cart they had to haul people around, one of my neighbors called them and asked for a ride for his wife. The driver laughed at him. This is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous the way that they treat residents. And again, they don't care. And that's all I have to say about the bike race. So, I'm sure she'll show you the video, but just know stuff was edited on there, comments were cut off and cropped. So typical games played by the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say something in citizen participation this evening? Gene?
That's it? Okay. Well, I wasn't going to speak tonight, but after listening to that gentleman talk, I have a total different idea about the bike race, so I think I should speak up. She said, why didn't you speak? I wasn't going to. Okay. I live right on Main Street. I had absolutely no problem with the whole thing. I actually sat on the lawn chair and watched the bikes fly by, and I think they had this cow meeting where everybody had a chance to do stuff. And then on, I think it was like May 3rd or May 5th, they had a meeting at the East Troy House for anybody who had any additional comments or concerns. There was just a few people there. Me, and maybe other than board members, you were there. There was nobody there, right, Jason? If you had comments or complaints, why weren't you there to ask your questions? I think they did a great job of trying to organize, and I think it's good for the community to have something like that because there ain't many communities get to have an event like that. So, and one of my neighbors had a problem with all the noise because the mic wasn't turned towards the square. I didn't hear a peep on him this year because they turned the mic towards the square. It took care of his problem. That was one of his biggest problems. So, I don't know. It was good to me. I like it, and let's keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have something for citizens' participation this evening? Good.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Marge Fournier, and I live at 1946 Fremont Street. The reason I wanted to talk about this race is I was involved in the meetings, when it was questioned here at the village board, they're just informational meetings. Let's see, and I was at the brewery at that meeting. Jason was there. There was about, I don't know, I thought there was about 10 people there, or I don't know, whatever, but it was part of the organizing, so I thought that it was carefully planned, personally. I don't live on Union Street. The one thing I was involved in was working at the intersection of Union Street and Division. So at that corner, it was a real busy corner, a lot of people parked, down Division or, on that side of town. So we met a lot of people, got a lot of really positive feedback. They were all coming to see the biking, even if they weren't interested in, or, bikers like, themselves, they just came because it was a cool event, or they were going to eat at one of the, restaurants on the square. So because they had to stop and wait, for us to give the signal, we had a lot of conversations with people in town and out of town. So a lot of good, good interaction. So being at that corner, there was one bad thing, that the only thing that I saw or observed, I was involved, but, and overall, everything went really well. But when I was on that corner looking down Union Street, you know, we followed the big groups of bikes. I don't know what they call the big groups of bikes, but the big, huge group of bikes came by, and then, you know, we just kind of kept an eye on them going down Union Street, and all of a sudden, a big dog came across from the north side of Union to, you know, and it crossed over right in the middle of all the bikers, definitely interrupted the bikers. And then the owner and everybody screaming at this dog there, and then the dog passed right back through the bikers as they were, but the bikers were like totally scrambling, like, what do? You know, you're going, but that was the only bad thing that I saw. And nobody got hurt, none of the bikers, but it's not a good idea as a biker to hit a dog or the dog getting hurt, you know. So, so let's see, I had some notes. Another good thing I think about it is that the Dairyland Group has been running it, I think, for 10 years, if that was 10 years. I like that idea. They, you know, the fact that they're setting up and, you know, through cleanup, they're very thorough. The end of that night, they're, you know, they set it, it's just a clean setup and a clean, you know, at the end of the night, you don't know that whole thing happened. That's another positive thing that I think is, you know, they seem to be very, you know, responsible. After I was at that corner for like 3 hours, then we were out walking around, and it seemed like all the restaurants were packed. So, you know, it just seemed like a really good thing for the town. The kids are involved, the adults in that slow bike race. So there's just one other thing I wanted to say. I appreciate you having this feedback. And you know, because it is a big event and it takes up a busy part of, you know, our little town. But I do have comments for other events on the square that were held this summer, and I was wondering when you're going to be scheduling a feedback for the other events that are held on the square and, you know, in the village or whatever, okay? So that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments during citizens' participation? Oop.
Hi, I'm John Lenz. I live on 3022 North Street, and I run Sauce Pizzeria. So, as was just said, the restaurants were super busy. That was our busiest day, hands down by a long shot. Our next busiest day was the Post Malone concert. So I feel like these events that are bringing customers and tourists to the town, I think they're great, and I think that helps a lot of the businesses. You think about like the brewery, Chinook, East Troy House, they're all right there. Those roads were all closed, and as far as I know, they were all very busy. And I didn't get out of Sauce probably till like 9 p.m., and I'm not sure what time the race was tear down at, but I think it was 8. It was like, it wasn't even there, which was pretty impressive because I was there when it was getting set up, and there was a lot of stuff. That covers it, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for citizen participation this evening? Something else?
I would just like to say that I'm sorry for the inconveniences that the gentleman had voiced earlier. You know, just on behalf of the whole event, that, you know, it's unfortunate that somebody had to deal with that, but I do think it's a workable thing that we could really work harder at or somehow communicate better. The event itself is such a benefit that, you know, like he said, I think we could, you know, work hard to fix that, so we know that, you know, he was pretty specific about what was inconvenient. So I hope you guys can work on that.
Thank you. Anyone else for citizen participation? Thanks, Jeremy. Anyone else says participation? Okay, I'll close that and we'll move on to miscellaneous business, or rather consent agenda, I'm sorry. One motion and a second will approve all of the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately. However, if we're discussing it, it doesn't need to necessarily be pulled.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then on to miscellaneous business, a Chamber of Commerce review of the 2023 Cycling Classic event. Vanessa.
Hi. Okay, so I know you have a big agenda, so I'm going to kind of highlight some stuff, and we can loop back to whatever you want. The Tour of America's Dairyland is a really unique event in East Troy because it started 10 years ago, and it has the unique position of not being a legacy event, but also being with us as our square has developed into the amazing showcase downtown that it is. And if you look at the end of the Prezi, I did a couple testimonials there's one from Waukesha and one from Janesville. And Janesville is touting this event of, come back in 5 years and you're gonna look around and our downtown's gonna have all this stuff. And that's what we did. That's what our downtown is now. We had, one restaurant when this event started, so it's kind of cool to see them actually come back, and we did have that. So that's just a side note. But we're day 2 of the Tour of America's Dairyland, and there's about 450 racers that participate in the event each day. There's around 1,100 total individual cyclists, and according to the Department of Tourism, the economic impact of the 11 days is $2 million. And to have a village of 4,000 people be a part of that economic impact, and I say economic impact because it's not just I bought a candle at Home on the Square or I spent money on that day. It's talking about, for example, Sauced, they hire extra employees, and then those extra employees make money and then they spend it. There's people that come back on different days. So it's not just a straightforward day of type thing. And then I'm just gonna show you a couple of pictures because it really highlights the day. So like I said, we're doing 10 years. And then that's a whole bunch of information on the Tour of America's Dairyland. It's the largest competitive cycling event in the United States. And there's 11 communities. And we're really proud to have this event in East Troy and in our community. I talked about the racers. Sorry, if you can just keep looping through. It was June 15th through the 25th. And it's nonstop action. We had 40 states and 15 countries represented. Our kind of highlight is the kids race. It is incredible. If you just keep pressing through, sorry, Eileen. We had record numbers of participants, and it's something that's really positive. They see these role models. It's all just a very healthy, amazing way for families to have this free entertainment right where they live. And we did have the slow ride race. Sorry, I'm going to keep, and it is a community showcase. We did pick this route. We went through a lot of different routes after the square was renovated, and this route was the ideal showcase of East Troy. And that's what you want to do when you bring an event like this. You want these racers racing through your downtown business district. And I just pulled a couple of slides from social media. This is one that the bikers said, East Troy never disappoints. And we do partner with a lot of people. The Klum Family Foundation has been a title sponsor for this for 10 years. They have believed in this event. Dennis Klum came and brought it to us. And we have tons of cyclists and clubs involved, the square businesses. Our police always leads our kids' race. And I did highlight, this was one of my favorite comments. It was from one of the racers, and they said, is this a real town or is it just a movie set created for this race? It was pretty cool. There was a lot on social media of negative back and forth, negative, positive, and someone wrote like, "We think the race is dumb." And then this person wrote back and said, "We visited the square for lunch and dinner. All the bars and restaurants were positively hopping. We spent money at 5 different businesses alone. It was a fun day. My kids love they can participate. We don't think it's dumb." Chinook had a really good presence. They had a rooftop viewing, and they did a nice shout out. And then Sauced, John spoke earlier, they sold out. And this is the comment that Edward was referring to. I did crop out the name because I didn't know if that person would want their name because it was related to him. But there was some miscommunication in which someone said that I said that we forgot to mail the parking, which is not accurate. I've never said that. There was one resident on Union that was actually really upset, and he threw a bell. We like deliver bells, and he threw the bell over my head. So there was a lot of, stuff that we were dealing with that we've never had to deal with in the last 10 years, and we really did do our best to try to communicate. The situation when he said someone came to his door at night was the property owner that owns the Chester Burns lot, and there were locks on his property. So he was just trying to communicate. The locks weren't his, so he was just trying to make sure that that didn't cause a problem on race day. So that's why there was that kind of last minute contact. But this person said, the crop said, "Besides the chamber forgetting to hand out the parking info, this year's race has been much better than last year." And so this, the shuttles seem to be available for the people who need them, and I'm sure having a direct contact number is helping. And if you look at the PDF I included, we did do a couple of different measures. We included the chamber phone and Toad's phone, so we had 2 areas of contact. So we did try to support the people affected by the road closings as best as we could. And then it's bigger than the race day, the hand cycling, adaptive cycling. Sorry, Eileen, can you? Okay. We are one of 3 races that has the hand cycling. And we also had some big time media exposure. We did our East Troy Taste the Goodness ad in the Wisconsin Bike Fed. And they said that was the coolest ad they've ever seen. So that was awesome. And then, sorry, Eileen, can you? We had a lot of coverage on Milwaukee and a lot of the Milwaukee publications. We had a billboard up promoting, so that was kind of a fun. We did have our billboard campaign last year, but this was a different coming to East Troy Day 2, which was kind of fun. And then that's that Bike Fed ad that was a huge hit. And then again, it's not just about the race day. There's a lot about the value of outdoor recreation communities. This is helping us, a stepping stone to leading to things like the bike path and leading to things like having a bike shop and having stops on these larger level. It's a $7.8 billion industry, and East Troy is in a perfect position to be an outdoor recreation community. And then we don't have to play the testimonials, but if you get time, maybe listen to what Waukesha and Janesville said. It was a really good day.
So I just want to say, good presentation. I go to it every year. I love it. I think it's a great event. It really does showcase the village. We went to the brewery and had dinner while it was going on, or partly while it was going on. There was an accident, and the female was professional. And one of the ladies that got injured, she was sitting behind us, and we got to talk to her for a while. She flew in for East Troy, and she was going up to Tosa, I think was next. And I said, "Did you break your foot or what happened?" She said, "I don't know, but if I have to, I'll go tape it on my bike so I can ride." She said, "This is the best event ever." So, and then when we were walking home, there was a kid that was on his bike, and he rode up right behind us. And he stopped us, and he said, "Did you guys go to the bike races?" We said, "Yeah." And I said, "Did you go?" And he goes, "I did, and I won it." And he had this biggest smile on his face. He absolutely loved the event. So kudos, I think it's great. And yeah, there's some tweaks that we need to do, but I could see this. I would love to see this continue.
Any other comments from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, next is a 2024 budget review session we've all been waiting for.
This will be
Operating budget with financial.
As exciting as the
management
bike races.
No, it's all good. I got to learn how to use Prezi, though.
plan. Yeah, that's a cool tool.
That was a little more riveting than PowerPoint. So I think this is since 2017, and I think we skipped 2018. But obviously, we've been doing this for quite some time now. I know there's been changes on the board from time to time, but I just kind of want to reiterate that given that this is kind of the operating section and involves a lot of dollars all over the place, that this tends to be the longer presentation. I hope a lot of what's provided in this as well should be reference material, so I do plan to kind of skip over some slides and say, this is for reference material for more or less you to kind of continue to digest each year, but to just know, okay, I can look back to last year's and this is what this means. So with that said, I would like to move this forward. And tonight's objectives are looking back. Part of this process not only looks forward, but looks backwards to look at financial trends for your operating and capital budget. We're looking to illustrate your long-range levy forecasts that incorporates the funds that all touch the levy. So that's inclusive of capital projects and debt service. And then we're looking to kind of see what our strengths and challenges are. And then finally provide that framework for the 2024 budget process and beyond. So we're really just looking to augment your continued efforts in your 2024 budget. So looking at some financial positives, as you may know, there is a policy to maintain, your unassigned fund balance at a certain level. So your year-end 2022 fund balance dropped slightly from 46% to 41% as a percentage of operating revenues, but your policy is 35 and your very strong Moody's score because you're still above 30%. So this is just to say you're continuing to do a good job. The policies and guidelines that you've directed staff to take have continued for the positive financial performance. Insofar as Moody's upgraded the Village this year in terms of your credit rating. So again, continue this practice, and 2022 ended that way. 23 and beyond is intended to end that way, and we'll kind of get into that later. As it relates to the 2024 budget, your 1/1/23 valuation came in with a 4.6% net new construction. What that means is the increase in value from last year to this year had a total change as a result of net new construction of 4.6% of last year's value. That change over the year is a very important number, as that is your allowable increase from last year's levy. So I'll kind of repeat that, but just kind of keep that 4.6% number in mind as we continue. And then there was legislation passed this year that allowed for additional county and municipal aids. So that's what CMA means, not Country Music Awards. And the supplemental CMA aid payment provides additional levy limit capacity, meaning that there's additional revenues outside of the levy that will be coming in to help fund 2024 budget expenditures and beyond. So the challenges, though, as every year, levy limits and kind of that intertwined net new construction number. We'll review the historical trend there, and you'll see why 4.6% is a good number. And then, as we've talked in the previous two conversations, you're limited as to how much general obligation debt you can take out. You're also, self-limited in terms of we don't want to be at the ceiling, right? We want flexibility for unknown projects that may come up that may need financing. So those are some of the challenges that every community is facing, and same with East Troy. So levy limits, understand that the basic rule is it's your prior year's actual levy that's allowable to increase by a percentage equal to net new construction, or zero if you've had none or only tear downs. So in that vein, net new construction is basically what we can increase our total expenditures by, absent other financial mechanisms that we find, whether that's additional state aid, whether that's other avenues that we may have within adjustments that we can make to the levy limit worksheet. So this is, again, kind of more intended for a reference slide, but should make more sense as we go through the actual numbers. So a historical glance from your equalized value and net new construction. The value is the blue bars. Net new construction is the percentage tied to the right-hand side here, where that line indicates each year's net new construction. So I don't know if you noticed this, but this kind of looks like the Rocky Mountains, and this is only within a gap of 2.6%. This is a chart that's online, publicly available from the Department of Revenue, but it's intended to show quite a historical perspective here of where the village has been for net new construction, primarily is what we're going to focus here on tonight. You've seen some years of really positive growth, above 1%, understanding that that only provides 1% of your actual last year's levy for the future year. But if you notice kind of the last 5 years, you've been hovering in between, what I'll call 1.2% and 0.4%. So that's quite limiting. So 4.6%, they don't produce this chart until later in the year. But when we show this chart next year, we're going to have a huge spike to 4.6. So again, it's another credit to the village in terms of bringing in new rooftops to allow for additional levy increase. So looking historical as to what does this net new construction percentage actually mean to allowable levy increase, that 0.4, 0.7 translates to $10,000 for a $4 million enterprise. That can really be restrictive. So understanding that 4.6 may not be the truth in perpetuity, we want to make sure to, one, take advantage of that, but then two, plan for more down years. So one of the things that you'll note in the presentation later is when we look beyond 2024's budget, we take a discounted 5-year average of your net new construction, and we really just kind of targeted about a 0.8% net new construction to be conservative for the following years, basically to say, if we're truly going to realize a 5-year average net, what obviously may be considered an outlier, may not be. Maybe we're collecting some positive momentum here. But if we're not, can we see what, only $20,000 gets us for the next couple of years, and what maybe some of the tougher decisions will be when compared to a year like this year where we get $106,000. I think another important component of this is it pairs well with what happened last year, in that we were allowed a levy limit adjustment as a result of a TID closure that allowed for a $103,000 increase in allowable levy. So you've kind of continued, and if you've had now 2 years of more easier budgetary decisions, I'm not going to say easy, but easier budgetary decisions, but this is allowing for some very beneficial things that we'll go through. So looking at kind of the levy, your valuation, and tax rate, right? We're trying to connect all of these little components together to basically say, how much have we been levying? How much have we been allowed to levy? And what has that meant for tax rate? So the goal of restricting levy by net new construction, right, is so that the tax rate tries not to waver too much, or at least that was the intent of legislation. However, what you may note is not everything in terms of valuation aligns with net new construction, meaning that you have economic appreciation that happens to valuation as well. When you have low net new construction but continued high economic appreciation in values of properties within a community, we're starting to see some actually challenges as it relates to controlling tax rates. So that's one thing I want to highlight here on this slide as we look 2020 to 2023. So these are actuals, meaning that these were levied dollars. So you can kind of see from 20, where you're at 2.38 million of total levy, and then there's a breakdown above that, to 2023, where you're at 2.57 million of levy, while you've levied, almost $200,000 more. The tax rate has dropped, by more than $1.50. So this is kind of a clear result to basically say you haven't been allowed to increase the levy beyond that point when we showed the allowable levy line. So you've, maxed out, your allowable levy, of course, each year, but the tax rate has continued to drop significantly. So if we do experience some issues with net new construction in the future, there may be points or other challenges as it relates to valuation. There may be points to which now this tax rate will start to increase faster than we'd want it to. So this is a careful consideration when we're looking at communities with high net new construction, as well as high increases in total valuation, to make sure that there can be tax rate control so that it can be an advantage to try to stay at the top of the tax rate where you've been, so as to further limit any roller coastering back up, if that makes sense. So it will probably in a few slides. So we're going to kind of dive deeper into just the 2024 budget. So before we do that, I just want to kind of remind you of what the levy is made up of. This is general fund and other operating funds. We're going to kind of talk to the methodology of how that is built and decided upon which funds gets how much levy on the next slide. It's also built on the capital levy, meaning that a portion of your levied dollars each year go to the capital projects fund as a way to offset the need for debt so that you can cash fund the smaller asset life projects, as well as continue to use a mix of cash and debt instead of having the need to go out to debt each year to fund your capital program. If you do recall from the first two workshops, we've kind of stayed on a $500,000 level for the capital levy. So we're going to show that what it looks like at a frozen level. And then we also talked about abated debt and using that allowable levy adjustment to control tax rate and maybe where that allows the capital levy to go to beyond that. And then finally, you're allowed to, of course, levy up to an infinite amount, whatever your payment happens to be that year, for general obligation debt service. So you're limited to how much you can have outstanding, but on an annual basis, up to your full debt payment, you are allowed to levy for that full debt payment. So looking a little bit at this methodology is we want to say kind of a bottom-up approach. What are our expenditures? So we'll get that budget from village staff and the department heads to say, here are the expenditures by fund. And then our non-levy revenue sources, let's try to manage those beyond what's known, so we kind of know this year. But beyond that, let's hold the remaining non-levy revenue sources flat, meaning we're not going to say all of a sudden we're collecting $400,000 of parking tickets because we got to balance this budget. But we're kind of being conservative with our non-levy revenue sources. So generally held flat, but also consistent with trends. And then solve for our levy need to basically say we have X being expenditures minus Y of non-levy revenues to find what our levy need is. And then we'll know our allowable levy based off of our net new construction to basically say, can we fill our levy need? So on the general fund, we just kind of wanted to point out one explicit funds categorization and identification of that levy need. The levy need's highlighted in green at the top there, but just to kind of highlight two sections of the increased costs. There are increased costs in public safety due to additional police staffing, but that is offset by an additional intergovernmental revenue or that supplemental country music award. County, municipal aid, whatever it is. But that's offset by that dollar amount, so $113,000 kind of helps pay for public safety, which isn't just the police officer, but other things as well under the expense category of public safety. Looking at our full levy summary, we just wanted to hit some highlights as we compare 23 to 24 in that the general funds increased its levy by about $69,000. Capital fund, right, we're setting it at that $500,000 level. So the last year's was 409, so that's kind of the largest increase. The $60,000 for other funds, which includes your library, CDA, airport, and rec funds. There's additional levy dollars. I think the largest component was to the airport. I believe you guys have talked about this plenty, but there's been kind of a change in terms of how you're operating that, identification of fuel sale revenues, and in as well as appropriate management in terms of how we're allocating our services there that's increasing expenses. So there's a levy need to the airport. And then your debt service levy increased slightly to by $36,000. So in total, there's a levy increase to $280,560, which we'll show on the next slide, kind of meets your allowable levy under the current levy standards. So this no allowable levy, this is meant to be a riveting slide on what your levy limit worksheet is that village staff completes every year. But this is basically the large calculation that goes into what are our levy limitations and what can we do. So understanding that your current allowable levy, and we kind of call this your minimum, is 2.7 million, but your levy need is 2.83. So we kind of say, all right, that allowable, meaning with or without the true debt adjustment, where do we kind of get to? But there's still a gap. So as we talked last time, you have abated debt. What that basically means is outside of levy revenues, there are revenues from the water and sewer utilities and TIDS, et cetera, that may pay for general obligation debt service, but you can actually levy for that in order to meet your levy needs. So you have the capacity of an additional debt service adjustment, and as well as we're going to be implementing a joint fire adjustment, because the joint fire services that you have under current levy limitations and current legislation, you can actually make a claim to that change, their budgetary change that they assess all municipal jurisdictions. So if their budget increases by an X amount, which is limited by statute, you can claim that adjustment. So the intent is to claim that as well. That's why it's highlighted in the bottom right there in yellow, in that we're looking for an additional levy there to be determined of what we need. But right now we're kind of saying our levy need is 2.8, the minimum allowable is 2.7. So that capital fund basically being the makeup of that 100,000, we're taking that abated debt service levy in order to tackle that net of the joint fire adjustment as well.
I just want to add to that in order to take the joint fire adjustment, the town of Spring Prairie and town of East Troy, as well as the village, need to approve a resolution to do so. So we haven't confirmed whether the towns will pass that resolution. If they don't, we will not be able to take the adjustment.
I can knock on doors. So the adjusted allowable levy results basically saying, all right, let's make up that gap for what we need to the 2.83 million to say, based on the projected assessed valuation, so that should be known towards the end of October, our tax rate is going to be $5.66. So even taking this adjusted levy to the 2.83 or getting to our levy need, our tax rate is going to be about $5.66. So one reason we're levying more, but our tax rate's dropping, this doesn't make much sense. Again, you've had another large valuation year increase due to net new construction, but also due to economic appreciation. This is kind of statewide. I talked to a community today to which they've been seeing that less than 0.5% net new construction and about an 18% economic appreciation. And it's really tanking their tax rate, to which they're supremely worried about what that means for the future. So while you're at a narrower gap, it's still a concern. You'll kind of see where we get to in future years as we consider the tax rate. But there should be a consideration made for tax rate protection. And what I mean by that is not trying to let it roller coaster up and down with valuation. So again, solving just to your levy need of saying if the capital projects fund is at 500,000, this is the levy need, and our tax rate is 566. There's an argument to be made. Should we actually levy more for the capital projects fund given the high increase in valuation to say, can we be at 5.96 like we were last year? So again, trying to keep that more flat. So that would be a policy decision of the board, but we just kind of wanted to point that out before we get to the future projections that we'll kind of show on future slides. So some ongoing budget tools. Again, we're always concerned about what the tax levy should be and our tax rate. I think that's kind of, while we have to take a long path to get there, it's kind of important to make sure that we understand what each levy decision and lever that we can pull on, what that implication on tax rate is, as well as levy limits, expenditure restraint, et cetera. But our bottom line is we want to not be punitive to taxpayers, of course. Looking at new services or initiatives, taking the claim to your allowable levy when you get them, which I think you've done a good job of, meaning last year we executed the wage increases from the salary study in those previous years, and then this year hiring additional public safety personnel as part of the increases that are allowable, not only from levy, but also from the additional CMA aid, and then allowing for permissible decreases in service levels if that's something that you're experiencing. Nothing really seen here, but that's something to always be explored. Is there something that we need to navigate more resources to and less resources from? And then capital project prioritization, we went through the first two workshops, and then finally making sure we're finding an appropriate debt level. Just so you're understanding, our expenditure methodology for beyond the 2024 budget is we've looked at these service categories each year through this process. We've upgraded each time what we're experiencing in terms of trends in each category. But this is basically to say what's our solve for future expenditures. And so this should just provide you with that percentage beyond 2024 where we're putting these cost categories just so we can get a level playing field on how to determine future levy need.
I got a question regarding the insurance. You've posted probably an increase of 7%. Is that just an estimate? I mean, my question to Eileen was, what did we just had an increase in insurance for health, and what was that percentage? I'm just ballpark.
Yeah, off the top of my head, it was a 12 to 14% increase last year. The prior 2 years were single digit.
And when I'm just looking at that 7%, and I'm wondering if that should maybe be a little higher than what it is. I don't want to underperform and lowball it if we could get into trouble.
So I actually ran the actual numbers for them and provided them the detail. I think it was for 5 years. I'm not positive. Kayla, do you remember? So I gave them the 5-year actuals. This is based off of 5-year actuals. So that's how we came up with the 7%.
And I apologize. I'm the worst colleague in the world. I also have with me Kayla Thorpe. We were very lucky to have her. She comes to us from local government, most recently the village administrator from the village of Butler, and has been an immediate help to all of us at Ellers, but we thought that she would be a good fit to assist the village of East Troy. So Kayla, meet East Troy, meet Kayla. I apologize. So looking at the projected levy using those expenditure methodologies and to say what is our future levy need. Again, capital projects we're keeping at 500,000. The operating funds were increasing by the amounts that we've just discussed. And then existing debt, we know, new debt we've projected based off of the first two workshops. We're identifying your future levy needs beyond 2024. So we go from 2.8 million in 24 to over 3 starting in 25, and then kind of an increase of 200,000 beyond that. So one of the big increases, 26, is your new debt service as a result of the 2025 borrowing, as well as 2027 borrowing that increases the levy in 2028. So one thing we just kind of wanted to point out is Eileen had asked the question, what does this mean kind of for tax rate changes? So we broke that down by these categories based off of the expenditures and that methodology of increasing each year. The general fund sees about a 19-cent tax rate change each year impact to taxpayers, and the new debt ends up to be about a 15-cent change each time you're taking on new debt. So if you're kind of curious as to the tax rate impact individually, we did run that as well, but understanding we run that against your allowable levy, saying if we only experience 0.8%, as it's noted in the first bullet point, where does our allowable levy go? And is there a gap? And the answer is yes. So anywhere it's highlighted in red, we have a levy need that's above allowable levy. Of course, we can navigate the capital projects levy as needed. But again, this allowable levy also assumes we're only using the minimum debt adjustment and not the abated debt. So this was kind of the discussion in workshop 2 to basically say, if we want to keep the capital levy at 500,000, we're going to need to use our allowable debt service levy adjustment. This is something that many communities do because levy limits are kind of crazy to think about net new construction not matching CPI, but our expenditures in operating have exceeded net new construction, and that's kind of true statewide. This is something that's going to be a continued issue, so you could either choose to allow the capital projects fund to not get that levy support, therefore having to issue more debt, therefore having to use more of the minimum debt service adjustment, or advance that, use your abated debt service levy adjustment, find an even mix of cash and debt, which we did with the initial capital plan, only issuing 2 debt issues for 25 and 27 in the total amount of, I believe, like $2.4 million. If we're not going to be levying at the $500,000, we would have needed another debt issue and more debt in 2027, if you recall. So we would be increasing the levy anyway. It's just we're doing it from the non-abated debt and forcing it upon the levy change. So this is the tax rate impact as a result of this initial run. So as to say you're at $5.96, you would go to $5.66 if you don't use an additional abated debt levy for 2024. But then in future years, under the presumption, that your valuations stabilize, the tax rate starts to climb and climb rapidly. So there could be a concern there as it relates to making sure that we're kind of controlling that tax rate as much as possible. Other considerations as it relates to controlling that tax rate would be the impacts of net new construction as it relates to items that go in to the TID and come out of the TID in future years. The one thing I'll mention there, though, is TID 4 is not expected to close for some time, so don't, a lot of times we get asked that question. I would just say, as it relates to the near term as shown on screen here, I would not expect that TID 4 has any impact to reduce the tax rate like TID 3 did most recently last year. So this can be kind of a concern. Again, we're running very conservative numbers as it relates to the valuation changes, but this is something that can certainly happen. The main point being trying to put in some controls for tax rate. If you just keep it level at the 5.95, which I think is on the next slide, that would allow for an additional $145,000 to go to the capital fund this year, which therefore you could reduce that 2025 borrowing by that amount as well to try to control the debt service tax rate beyond that point. So I would just say an additional benefit there, but that kind of helps stabilize the tax rate in an approach many communities use. Are there any questions on tax rate? Because we're going to kind of be, from this point on, kind of done. I just want to see if there's any.
I just had a comment about the 500,000 for capital projects. Would we want to increase that by a certain percentage every year? I know it's flat across, each year 500,000, but there's going to be, increases in cost.
Right.
CPI.
A good consideration and can be a control put in place. I think it's always going to think of it as your movable object. So I would think you'd want to, basically this plan is designed to say, here's what could happen, but we execute each year in each budget year at the time that we know our valuation. So I would say this is kind of, the plan is to adjust that as necessary. We put it flat at 500 just to show what that looks like, but right, that is your movable object. So it could be the goal to increase that. But as shown a couple of slides ago, the allowable levy just won't allow for that, depending on what, if we're talking 25,000 or 100,000 each year, you're going to hit the levy ceiling eventually. But that should be the movable object, and you're correct, can be a consideration as construction costs increase and project costs increase. Okay. Can we go back to expenditure restraint? No, that's okay. It kind of doesn't matter this year, so maybe we can skip it. What I mean by that is Act 12, which was passed this year, put in the controls because we now have a supplemental aid payment, which would obviously incline communities to increase their expenditures for this aid payment. Obviously, the legislation acknowledged net new construction isn't enough. Public safety is an area that's struggling statewide. We can provide, they also allow it for like public works and transportation, but public safety was kind of the forefront. So I'm kind of focusing on public safety for that reason. But we're going to have an increase in expenditures, right, for 1 year. So the legislature, smartly enough, said for 1 year, those expenditures, that expenditure restraint program is going to be kind of frozen in qualification, meaning if you qualified last year, you automatically qualify this year. If you didn't qualify last year, you automatically don't qualify this year, and all payments are the same. So as a way to kind of, one, maintain their budget, but also two, recognize that there's going to be communities using higher expenditures. I'm probably sure they were more focused on their own budget, but that, I'll try to make it sound fair. In looking at what that means, therefore, is the village is increasing expenditures pretty rapidly as we think about, 2023 as compared to 22, as well as 23 to 24, right? We have $100,000 from net new construction that we can use. We have $100,000 from supplemental aid. Of course, our expenditures are going to increase significantly. So each year, you qualify or disqualify for expenditure restraint on a budget-to-budget basis. If it's 60% of your net new construction up to 2%, which is fun math, and then plus CPI. So your allowable increase for the 24 budget is 2% because you had 4.6, put that in half instead of using 60%, but you're at that 2% limitation or ceiling there, plus CPI, which is 7.7%. So your 2024 budgetary expenditure restraint, which doesn't matter, but your increase is 9.7. The benefit here is also this is a budget-to-budget exercise. So in other years that I've come before you, I've made the point that we want to maximize that ceiling every year because it's not actual dollars spent, right? It's budget-to-budget. So you can budget a contingency to get to your ERP ceiling so as to not punish your ERP floor the following year. So this also provides that opportunity this year when we qualify, even if we percentage-wise don't qualify. So here we have an 11% increase above what you're allowed, which is that 9.7 number under 24 for payment year 25. So you're good there. One thing I will point out is we try to remain conservative here as well. So we've kind of flattened out CPI to see what these expenditure categories do to the increase. Obviously, being conservative on net new construction, we're under the 2%. And then the CPI being lower as well, we just kind of wanted to run it. Basically, the CPI floor is about 4%. Pay no attention to this being an actual projection. It's only to point out the fact that what is the CPI floor if you're exceeding, CPI, if your expenditures are rising higher, where's the penalty come in? And that's about 3 years. So just kind of wanted to point that out. Fund balance. This is a slide that I'm going through word by word. I'm just kidding. Take this home. Look at this. When we talk about fund balance, this just provides the definition of what each of them are and some examples of each. But the most important is unrestricted, basically to say we can choose what to do with it. That's what the Moody's and the opinions on credit worthiness are going to focus on, is your unrestricted, unassigned fund balances.
Aren't TIF funds restricted, though?
TID? Yeah, so not all TIDs funds. Basically, they're for the projects within the TID, so they're restricted in what you should use them for statutorily. The fund balance itself may not be self-restricted, so that would be kind of a self-designation within the fund that you're making. But you're correct that you can only use them for certain project costs. But it wouldn't necessarily mean that they're restricted funds on your audited financials. And then again, I'm providing this for reference that these are kind of the uses of fund balance and why the rating agency focuses on them. But essentially, you need a rating day fund when you're limited on your revenue capacity. So we'll kind of let this slide be reference material as well to help you fall asleep tonight. The general fund balance, though, this is an important slide that we kind of review and was the onset to setting, the financial policies and moving forward to make sure that this plan is executed in a financially sound manner, which has now led to this upgrade. So here, the columns are just breakouts each year by category of fund balance, the most important one being the bottom, the dark orange. So you want that unassigned fund balance to eclipse both of the lines identified there, which is the target unassigned that you impose internally, as well as a GFOA target. Moody's is in the middle there, as we kind of talked about, at about 30%. I will say their median, in terms of what they look at other communities are doing, is rising. Their methodology for credit worthiness has not changed yet, and this is why they've allowed the village to increase. But I wouldn't be surprised if they reach the 35% at some point. If that happens, we may need to relook at what the village's policy should be. It should always be a little bit above that so as to not lose your credit rating. And then finally, kind of the TIDs. TID 3 did close in 2022 in terms of what was refunded to the village, 193,000 refunded to the village. You were also allowed a levy adjustment. So that allowed about 100,000 in terms of levy, base levy capacity. TID 4 added about almost $18 million of increment value in 2022. So that was a very important increase for 2024. Very numbersy slide here as well, but basically TID 4 is still in a good position for the future, meaning that we're kind of getting out of the infant stages where typically TIDs tend to realize some negative fund balances because of the startup costs, before increment valuations kick in and that increment revenue comes in about 2 years later. So understand that it's typical to see some red in the earlier years, and now we're building out of that. In addition to it, there are other prospective developments that could even bolster this. But right now, the TID closure's basically shown about 5 years in advance of its current maximum life. So this is to say, I would call this a well-performing TID at the point that it's in now. That was not the same 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, but it's to say it's in a better position now than it was. So we would hope that trend to continue. The one thing I will say there as well is, speaking to tax rate, all kind of equalized tax rates due to this economic appreciation has started to creep all taxing jurisdictions' tax rates. And so when that happens, the actual increment revenue that you realize goes down. So there's concerns there. However, this has the current tax rate put in it and kind of frozen, so we're not being overly conservative or under conservative. But so as to say, this TID's kind of turning around in a positive direction as of today.
Good, glad to hear that, Forty. Anything else from her? Thank you both very much.
Okay. Eileen, is there anything that we wanted to get from them, or did you, I know you probably put things in the memo, so I didn't want to steal your thunder if there's, yeah.
You're not stealing my thunder
Okay.
at all. I will not review the memo for the board's sake. I know that there's a lot of detail in there, and hopefully you've reviewed that. I know it's a lot of information tonight, but I have to say, I feel like our budget process is much better than it was before, and thank you, Brian, for your work, because I think it's very helpful and educational. So the direction I'm seeking are a couple of things. One, I just want to know that we are okay with using that abated debt for that $500,000 levy for capital. So I'm seeking direction from the board on that item because we have not yet incorporated that in the village's document. So the operational budget that was in your packet didn't have that amount because I wanted that direction from the board. So I'll want you to discuss that. I'm also looking for direction on the Lions Club fireworks. So the last 3 years, the village has paid for that fireworks show. I've never been directed that that is to continue in the future. So if we wish to continue that, I won't come back every year, but I just need that direction from the board. I just had some general information about the iPads for the Plan Commission, and then I just wanted to point out for the board, if we are going to utilize that abated debt, I am going to recommend changing that budget schedule. We would be having a special meeting on November 27th to have that budget public hearing. The reason being is we don't get the final equated statement of assessment till sometime in October. We'll have to work on finalizing that, which I would think if Brian, jump in if I say this incorrectly, but we had talked about if our assumptions are close enough to what we've presented, we would run with that, publish the notice accordingly. If our projections were off, we'd bring it back to the board before we publish that notice to get your approval on what we're incorporating and publishing. But that would mean that I would need the board to reserve that November 27th date specifically for the budget public hearing, the presentation, and consideration of that budget. So
you want to take these in order then? First. So the first up would be the fireworks for the Lions Club for the 4th of July Festival. What? Not according to this. This is order. I was looking at this, sorry.
I would say yes.
Can we
To the
use
fireworks.
Can we use ARPA?
Do we need a motion for that, or do you want to just take direction?
I am good with direction as long as everybody can acknowledge that's the consensus because it will be in the final budget document that you formally approve.
I think you've got it. Okay. Okay, then the next would be regarding use of the abated debt to basically help flatten the tax rate over the next few years.
Right, I would say the direction should be, flatten the tax rate, because that would be the highest use. And then if we come back with the actual numbers, we could probably either bring that down, but it would be that would be the guiding light, is kind of flattening the tax rate, because that's actually going to be above the 500,000 then amount. So I would say, right, if the consensus could be not on the 500,000, because that was just kind of keeping it level with where it's been, but rather kind of more of the tax rate issue, and just saying we're not going to go above last year's tax rate. I think that provides truer guidance, if you agree, Eileen. Okay.
Any
I'm in
concerns
agreement.
over that?
I'm in agreement.
Yep, good.
More direction there? Good. And then last is the Plan Commission, moving them to iPads?
We don't have to consider that. That was more just an update because I had actually talked to the board about this last year. I just haven't gotten to it yet this year. But I did question how your iPads are functioning. I did ask this last year at this time. And some of them are from 2017, but if they're still functioning great, I think that's a good purchase, I guess, if they're lasting longer than laptops.
Yeah, it
so
works
that's
great.
good.
You only need it for documents and email, so
Yeah.
you don't need much
Perfect.
more than that.
It's a little slower, but it's not as slow as me, so yeah, I think it's fine. Mine is.
Okay. And then the schedule, I will bring to the October 2nd meeting for formal approval, since the board did previously approve that. So we don't need any direction on that.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, next up is consider replacement of the canopy nets at Mitchell Park. Vicky's not here. Jason's not here. So,
I have one question though, John. I know if you want to put it off till Jason comes back.
No.
Okay, but I'm just.
I don't see a reason.
They talked about the support post, and I just didn't know if that post was going to need replacing or not. That was going to be my question to Jason. To me, it made sense. If you're going to do a whole new net setup, you might as well do the post right away so you don't have to take it apart later.
oh no, I think I got it. Okay, thanks. I think they would have identified that if that was an issue, because this is certainly, this is certainly within budget. So I think they might have identified it, and that's certainly something we could do in the future if we needed to. Yeah.
I'll make a motion
List.
to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve $7,995 for the replacement canopy nets for backstops at Mitchell Park.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, airport fuel, August sales and consideration of approval of fuel purchase. Can you help us out, Doug?
I will say that Jason did intend to attend this meeting and was unable to, so he was going to present this. But Doug, is this something that you are ready to present on? We do have a memo.
Just give us a pep talk on the airport.
Yeah, is this in regards to the fuel purchase? Okay. Yes, we're going to be needing some Jet A fuel, and I know he wants to have enough money in there for purchasing Jet A and 100 low lead. So it's going to be coming up also with the 100 low lead. The Jet A is also ordered. It just needs to be okayed. So.
And this is coming up, just to remind the board, this is coming up because this isn't a budgeted item this year, so we have to revisit it every time we're going to make this type of purchase. Next year, it will be in the budget, so we won't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is basically an approval to continue operations.
Basically, yes, yeah. So,
Fuel seals going pretty good out there?
yeah, tanks are going empty, so that's a good sign. Nobody's stealing it.
I'll make a motion to authorize DPW Director Eklitz to purchase fuel for the airport up to $50,000 as needed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, a discussion on ARPA funds. First up is the security system. Jeremy?
So during some department head meetings and things on Friday, it was brought up that we would like to get cameras on the square and at the airport and stuff. And as you know, last year we put up cameras on the grandstands and at the skateboard park. And just having these separate systems all around just was not working. So we decided that I would contact Complex Security Solutions, who is currently, who put in the system here, and also updated the system when we went with outside cameras. And they came out and met with Eileen and I, and we talked to them about it. They have this new platform that they use. The platform that we are on now is kind of extinct. It really, you can't add any more cameras to it. You couldn't be able to do what we wanted to do. So they have this new platform, Genetech, and you pretty much start from scratch, and you can build your whole system up as you go. But we identified some areas that we would like to have some security cameras, as the treatment plant, the airport, the square, Playmore Park, the skateboard park, and the grandstands. And as my memo states, where we would place the cameras and how many there would be. The cameras that are currently inside and outside this building would just be transferred to this Genetech platform. We don't have to update our cameras or anything. They're the same ones that we'd purchased to put where we're going to at the new sites. Also, since we are doing this, we took a look, and on this platform you can also do the key entry system that we have in the village here and at the police department and administration here. So we could add that to it, and it all just runs on this one platform. There's a lot of other things that we could do with this platform. We took a visit to their headquarters and went through their demo thing. They actually have like a gunshot spotter type thing like you hear about in City Milwaukee, that you can hook up to this Genetech system. And they tested it for us there. They went out to the other room and shot it, and the alarm went off, and it kind of shows you where it came from. So it's a nice, I thought it was a really nice platform, and I think just the idea of being able to add on to it if we ever need to in future years, I think it's a good thing. So, and the school district recently went to this platform within the last year, and they like it also. So, and I think the other thing that we identified also was the bathrooms on the square. Currently, DPW opens them in the morning, and then we're supposed to lock them at night. Sometimes we forget, or we're busy and don't get to it. And with this new system, we'll be able to do like this key thing, and we'll also be able to program when the doors open and when they'll lock. So as long as nobody props one open, they'll automatically, we can say they open at 7 a.m. and they automatically close at 8 p.m. during the summer hours when they're open.
So expandability, it's a lot more capabilities, but it's also expandable.
Right.
Really nice.
Yeah, well, at the airport, we will have to add 2 poles at each of the gate entrances that we're going to go to, just to put the camera on. Jason said DPW will be able to, the poles are included in this estimate. The poles are included, it's just DPW is going to have to put them up for us, so.
The one thing I wanted to add too is in that quote, they include the server, which you are going to have to upgrade in the next year or two anyway. So our existing server was going to have to be upgraded.
Yeah, when they were out within the last 6 months, they came out to replace a camera, or not replace it, to find out why it wasn't working, the one in the PD lobby. He just mentioned to me, that server's 7 or 8 years old. It's on its last legs. So we're going to have to replace it anyway. So that was going to probably be the plan in 2025 if it didn't go down before then. So.
Is there
And another thing with this system is, like, I'll be able to, like me, Jason, and Eileen will all have access to the whole system and be able to do things. But like I can give Doug access to just look at the cameras at the airport. Vicky can just get access to look at the cameras at the parks and the square. And so we can kind of spread it out so those people can also take a look at them, what they're in charge of.
One thing I didn't notice, and I may have missed it, is there a support cost, an ongoing support cost for this system?
If you look at it, it's unlimited training and support included. It's on the quote. So, and they've always, like I said, I can't remember exactly when they came out and repaired the camera in the lobby in the PD, but they were out the next day after I called them, and we never got a bill. So they just come out and I know I've called them before about some issues that I needed, and they've just done it over the phone or they've stopped out, so.
How is this expenditure going to work? Is it going to be budgeted for 2024?
This will come out of the ARPA funds if approved.
Where did you see the support? I see 5-year warranty.
The first page of the proposal, it says 5-year warranty on all cameras. That's only for the new cameras that we're putting up. It's not the ones here on the building. And then 1-year warranty on the labor, and then it says unlimited training and support included.
So Joe, the ongoing costs look to be the cellular connection,
Right.
because those are obviously
I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure for the security system upgrade, camera, and fob entry systems using ARPA funds.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Good. Okay, next up is audiovisual upgrades. Eileen?
Okay, so the materials in the packet are from the July 17th meeting. You'll recall we had a conversation about that, and that was, a decision on that was postponed. President Johnson did ask me to bring it back to the board, and we had some further discussions, and I would recommend at this time proceeding with one meeting room to see how much it's utilized, how it goes. I will say that what we had done previously was we had set up the TV cart with the Crestron device. And what I am going to explore with the provider is potentially repurposing that Crestron device into meeting room C, which is the meeting room right here off the boardroom. And the reason being is that when the TV cart's not plugged in, the Crestron device doesn't accept meeting invites. So it makes it very difficult for me to invite it to a Teams meeting. But I have used that TV cart with the Crestron device in the actually since Labor Day, I probably have used it about 6 different times for various meetings. So we are starting to use it more frequently. It's really driven by the number of development meetings we're having. That seems to be the primary time that I am using it. But I think having it there might provide more convenience to use it more often. And it's not just for Teams meetings, also for presenting when you're in meetings. Obviously, having the ease of being able to project what's on your screen on a TV screen, it's much easier to communicate and, work together on things. So I guess going forward, my recommendation for the board, if you would consider this, is to just approve meeting room C at this time. And I'm going to explore options to reduce the costs. As I had mentioned in my memo, we have a TV that we've inherited from a donor. So I'm going to see if we can repurpose that TV and not have to purchase a new TV. And I'm also going to check with CTI on repurposing the Crestron device and the soundbar that are on the TV, and just continue to use that TV more just for display purposes only and not virtual meetings. So I'd be looking for approval up to $10,000, but I think that it'll come in much less if I have the ability to do some of the things I'm saying right now.
And we're talking about taking that equipment that's there off the cart and then mounting it on the wall, correct?
Yeah, if I have the ability. There will be some upgrades to the room that we had talked about in the proposal. We talked about running electric to the table in that room, and then we'd have to have some chases under the table, and that Crestron device probably either would be mounted on the wall or sitting on the table. So I would look to repurpose those, but just in case I can't, that's why I'm saying like $10,000. I think between the Crestron and that TV, I'm going to be able to save the village some money, if not, reduce that cost to much less.
And my concern in doing this has been primarily usability. How easy is this system going to be to use, for someone walking in? And so I think doing just one room is going to give us a good opportunity to prototype that and make sure that the documentation is easily usable by anyone walking in the room. I used to have this standard when I documented systems that went along the lines of, can my mom figure this out? And that's kind of the standard that I would like to apply to the documentation we would build for this, keeping it concise, of course.
So we're not going to put the Post-it note on a remote control?
No. It's not going to be a list of Post-it notes. So I'd entertain a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the audiovisual upgrades in Conference Room C up to $10,000 using ARPA funds.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then lastly, what to potentially use for some of the rest of the ARPA funds, right?
As we discussed, the best use for ARPA funds are one-time uses, because we don't want to rely on it for future operations. So they shouldn't be used in a fashion like that. I put out some ideas as suggestions for the board to consider, not necessarily anything you have to take action on tonight. The funds must be committed by the end of 2024. One of my recommendations is to consider having staff begin to digitize old paper records. We have a vast amount of old paper records, and a certain amount of those in the room behind us are permanent retention, so we're required to keep them forever. I do have concerns about some of those documents. More recently, the historical minutes and the historical election records from when the village was established were moved to a fireproof safe. We have a large fireproof safe in this building that we inherited from the prior owners of the building. However, the ink is beginning to fade on those, and I am a little concerned that eventually that history is going to be lost. So the benefit is not only for preservation purposes, but also efficiency. What we obviously have found as staff, as we've proceeded to move all of our other stuff electronically, so we're not really adding to that room anymore, is how efficient and easy it is to find records. And we still do dig in those old records. So when I get those old records requests, I go, oh, really? I'm going to have to go dig and try to find a needle in a haystack. But, they are fairly organized. So that's a consideration for the board. That is a project that I envision. I don't know what the cost is. I wanted to just kind of see if the board was receptive or interested in pursuing this project, and I can get quotes and bring that to you. But I do foresee that being a several-year project because there are a lot of records. I know DPW also has some records that they would be interested in digitizing, some plans and things like that, yes. So the other option would be await the bids on the lobby and HVAC project to make sure that our fund balance is adequate to cover those costs, and then we can make a decision on digitizing the records, which is probably the best approach tonight. Or you could allocate a portion to CDA and economic development efforts. So I guess I'm more interested in finding out tonight if the board would like to wait on any decision until we get those quotes. And then we can bring that back if you would like me to get quotes on digitizing, or if you have other ideas that you would like us to explore for ARPA funds.
I think we should still investigate digitizing, get the quotes on it, because if we do have records that are starting to fade, obviously we don't want to lose that documentation. So, I think it's important that we at least start that process and get some information so we can make a decision from there.
And eventually 40 and I won't be around to tell you what happened 100 years ago.
You still have the challenge of reading the handwriting in those records, but. Okay, thank you. I will start to get some quotes, and then we can make some further decisions, and maybe by that time we have some costs on the renovations that we're considering as well.
Okay, next up, consider approval of a 2-lot certified survey map for the property located at 3022 North Street. RXUP 00019, Jamie Rohr, applicant, application 2023-21.
I was going to ask Jamie questions, but he left. I'm kidding. I'll make a motion to approve the certified survey map for the property at 3022 North Street based on the general and specific conditions in the staff report, application 2023-21.
Good.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. And then next is consider approval of a conditional use for outdoor display / sales per section 510-42E of the zoning code for property located at 2584 Main Street, RA 30570002. David August owner, Dale Leisure tenant, LTR Power Center, application 2023-14.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use for the outdoor display sales at 2584 Main Street, subject to the items in the draft conditional use order dated September 7th, 2023, application 2023-14.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? A lot of conditions there. Okay. All right. In that case, all those who in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Well, I had a concern earlier that I just wanted to make sure that the application it's going to be understood that they're going to make some consideration for the driveway. They had a tough situation on the driveway for trucks entering off of ES, and they were going to make a solution or try to come up with a solution. And I had stated earlier that I just thought it would be a good idea. It would be on Culver's and not the bank or for the Waniseks office to have to go through any hardships because it's not their fault. So I just want to make that on the record.
One thing from the map that I was looking at, they weren't coming in off of ES. They were coming in off of 20.
But they also wanted to come in off of ES. The trucks. They were going to have trucks coming in
His map didn't show that.
Yeah, it was discussed at the Plan Commission meeting that they said the trucks would be coming in evening or at night, and they would be coming in off of ES and turning in on that driveway. They wouldn't be coming in off of 20. That's why I wanted to make sure that that driveway was going to be squared away.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. I heard they were coming in off of 20, and then they were going to come out on ES and leave on ES.
Well, Laura, you were at the Plan Commission.
I watched it.
I know, I
watched it
understand,
live.
but I'm just saying, because I remember talking to them about that.
So this conversation really, and I didn't think of this earlier when you had asked me a question about it, 40, this is really related to the site plan, which the Plan Commission approves. The board does not approve site plan. This conversation is relevant to what the Plan Commission considered. Right now, we're looking at the conditional use. So Plan Commission has final review authority on site plan. They make a recommendation to the board on the conditional use in the CSM. So, but as it was approved, to clarify, the motion stated, and I can read it here just to clarify for that site plan, it approved the site plan submitted subject to the listed 26 terms and for staff to work with the applicant to draft a developer's agreement. And that was to address any concerns related to the ingress and egress, and if the ingress and egress should become a problem, the developer would be responsible to address those issues in the future.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use for Culver's Restaurant, application 2023-16.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'll follow up with a motion to approve the one-lot certified survey map located at 2557 North Street, application 2023-20.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, on to ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2023-16, support county effort to pursue library legislation.
I just want to make a comment too, that both the town of East Troy and the town of Troy have already approved a similar resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-16.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Resolution 2023-17, authorizing administrator to submit the DNR recycling grant requests.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, ordinance 2023-08, consider amendments to ordinance 458-24, seasonal all-night parking restrictions and permits. Jeremy, I believe we discussed this, and this is just an update to the ordinances with regard to what we agreed upon, correct?
Correct. So it adds single night parking and just no more than 2 permits at that address. So if they already have 2 seasonal permits that were purchased for November through March, they will not be able to purchase a single night. Or the other way around, if they have 1, then they only get 1 single. So just restricts it to only 2 per address, so we don't have, and they need to park in front of the residents if they can. Obviously, those people that live on the square have to park on Union Street. So we just need to, if we agree to this, we're gonna need to, the village board will need to agree on a fee amount for the single night parking permit.
Yeah, and that'll be during budgeting when we agree on the fee structures. Yeah.
I had a question, though. I thought the discussion was that even if the house had 2 overnight parking stickers for out on the street, that in a case of an emergency, they would be allowed to have that one single night park out there if, for some reason. I didn't think they would be negated from being able to have a relative that maybe came in for a funeral or a wedding or something, that to park out overnight, that they would not be allowed to get it then, because there were 2 already there?
Yes. Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, you have.
Anyone else share that concern?
Here, my point is, let's say you had a wedding, okay, or something with a gathering, and the people that live there have 2 cars parked on the street, they have their permits or whatever, and somebody else, for some reason, the car broke down, for whatever reason, they want to get an overnight for one night to stay there before they go home, and now they're going to be told, no, you can't.
Jeremy, how many addresses do you have 2 permits at?
There weren't a lot last year. There were maybe a handful. So it's not like there's a whole bunch of addresses.
So in understanding the analytics at this point, we don't have much to go off of. We really need to set a baseline to understand that. I get where you're coming from, 40, but we do have to have, some rules in place in regards to this process.
Which can certainly be changed later.
What's the parking ticket? $25? Then a OWI.
Those are the exact words I use to people that come in and complain when they get a citation on the square. I tell them, hey, it's $25 is a lot better than your insurance going up, your fine, not having a license, so forth. And then they kind of agree with me, so.
Jeremy, would it be correct to assume if there were some extenuating circumstances, like 40 said, that the department would work with maybe some neighbors to make something work out?
Yeah, we're always agreeable to work with people on things like that, yes.
So we have an out.
Sounds like there's some options. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-08.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, ordinance 2023-07, consider approval of rezoning of the property located at 2010 Church Street, ROP 0008, from highway business to general industrial. McCreate LLC, applicant Jeff McPherson, agent, application 2023-18.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-07.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, time for reports. August financial. Question 40?
I appreciate it, but I was going through the other stuff that was being presented, so I didn't have enough time to look at it, but that's okay.
Okay, moving on. Park and Rec minutes from July 10th. Any questions for me?
The dog park looks very nice out there, the agility. I like it.
Yeah, it was nice, the way the scout initially set things up, and then there were some issues noted by someone that actually does agility training, and he came right out and adjusted them, like a tacky surface to go over the inclines and the distance or the angle of the inclines and things like that. He was right out there to fix it, so worked out great. Yeah, it's very cool. Anything else? Okay, moving on. Library minutes. Mary?
Okay, the only thing I can say is there's a fundraiser for the Friends coming up the next 2 weekends. Hope to see some of you there. You can buy pies.
Pies?
Murder at the Pie Auction.
Pies.
And there will be live pies, real pies. Sounds like something out of Sweeney
dead
Todd,
pies.
doesn't it?
That would be not quite minced meat pie. Okay.
Why do I envision a Three Stooges pie fight here now?
I'll bring the whipping.
That'll be in a parking lot later.
Yeah, I'll bring the whipped cream. Mary, I did have one question on the representative reports, Village of East Troy. There was something about a 3% wage increase. Was that a typo or something in the minutes?
That's the same as.
That's, the staff is down later. This is, it says it's a Boy Scout presented plans for the agility course, approved a 3% wage increase.
Oh.
That's what I mean.
No, we did not give the Boy Scout 3%.
Just wondering, you know.
It's a non sequitur, obviously. But
All right.
3% is consistent with what the village employees are getting.
Yeah.
The other item is the town of Troy has booked Lake Park, too.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. All right. Then the Airport Advisory Committee minutes. Any questions for Jim? Outside of how much do they actually, how much of the runway is actually painted pink? Do you know?
That was my question right here, John. I'm hoping it's just the ends because there's going to be a lot of paint to do the whole runway.
Is it them? Doug, do you have any idea on the runway?
No, I talked to Colleen from the Friends this morning, and it's at both ends of the grass runway. It just, yeah, it's a grass runway, and she asked if I'd mow it down a little bit lower, but they go in there on Saturday morning, paint in the ribbon and so forth.
Is there any feedback from the pilots on the condition of the airport and?
A lot of positive, a
Yeah.
lot of cleanliness, grass being mowed more often. I haven't, any.
Doug's a nice guy.
Nice guy, yep. I wrote that in there in the comments, but.
How about the FBO office, the entry when you come in? Are they?
Yes, we're becoming, it's slowly, but it's being well kept, well lit. Obviously, the lights were an issue before that they weren't even being turned on, so. Biggest thing now is a courtesy car. That's probably the biggest issue that and I'm pursuing other options for that too, so. But yeah, everything seems to be going well and just a work in progress, so.
We're gonna have to say it. Can we use ARPA funds for it?
I think working well is an understatement. It's great, Doug, and it's because of the work that you're doing there. There were some concerns about the grass runway and doing some repair on that.
Yes, and I had talked to Jason about that. We have some topsoil in TID 4 that I guess we can use, and I did talk to Sam out at the airport also, and in October, we're gonna be closing the grass runway and putting down just a thin layer of grass, or of topsoil, and spread it out, and just each year build it up little by little. So there is a little progress in that direction too, so.
Great. And next up is Plan Commission minutes from 9/11, last Monday. Anything for 40?
It was a long meeting.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe I won't advertise it on Facebook next time. Yeah.
Oh, it was you. Pen name, huh? Okay. All right, well then we'll,
Highway 20 update?
Highway 20 update. Oh, I missed that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Jason is not here, and it was a verbal update from Jason, so He did not share. He did not share it with me.
I can share,
For what
there's a
it's
lot of
worth-
dirt out there. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I did ask Jason, and I said, Jason, are they still on schedule to be done by end of October? He says, no, it's more likely going to be November sometime.
And they're supposedly going to be using blacktop, right? Asphalt? So I'm a little concerned as the stretches on, how long the plants are going to be open, right? Don't
Well,
they shut
that usually,
down right around hunting time?
Thanksgiving is usually the cut time.
Hunting season, right. Okay, then, I'll make a motion that we adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Parens broker representation agreement and TID 4 offer to purchase industrial development. And Wisconsin statutes 1985 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. 1F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems or the investigation of charges against specific persons where, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. And 1E, for the purpose of conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, police department personnel matter.
Second.
Can I just catch my breath?
Yeah.
We're not in closed yet, guys.
Yeah, we're not closed. So roll call vote?
President Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Holm.
Yes.
Trustee Nugent. Yes. Trustee Renucci. Trustee Smalley. And Trustee Wisniewski.
Yes.